Turbo cam. Hashtag turbo cam. Not just regular turbo cam, but hashtag turbo cam. Excuse me. We are live 6:43 on the 16th of January, starting the new year out right, doing it up. And the question is, so let me tell you what some of the issues that I have, not issues that I have, some of the problems that I have with answering some questions or comments. And this is the difficulty, and it's more because I think that the people that are asking the questions don't really understand like how much information that you need to pick the right cam, or even to know the thing that you're looking for out of the right cam. That's why when we have these discussions and I'm talking about, well, okay, what's the best cam for a 6.0 or a 5.3 or a Dodge Omni or whatever it is they're asking about, like, well, we need information. The first thing that we need to do is tell you that there isn't a best cam for that. There's not that. That's not really a thing. It's not like, okay, here's the best cam imaginable, and I want you to get that. You know, obviously at richardholdenerperformance.com, I've got cams that I sell. And as much as I would want to tell you that this is the best cam, there are lots of camshafts that I don't sell that will be the ones that probably would work for you. If somebody wants to make like lots of power and they want to rev the thing to 7,000 or 7,500 or 8,000, neither one of those cams are a good choice. And so I still want to steer you in the right direction. But the thing that I need to help get you in the right direction is I need more information. I need more data. And I'll show you, you can take a look at the thumbnail that I have up, and it's a dyno graph of a comparison between two factory cams on a 6-liter LS. One of them is a factory 6-liter LQ4. I think that this is the early LM7 camshaft. The other one is a factory LS3 camshaft. So right away, there are some similarities. So if somebody said, okay, what cam should I put in my 6-liter? I'm like, okay, well, here are some things to think about. You know, what are you trying to achieve? Well, I want the most torque. Okay, well, as luck would have it, if we're comparing these two cams, these two camshafts make identical peak torques within 1 foot-pound of each other. So there's nothing to choose there. So you can't choose from the peak torque, you know, situation. Okay, they both make really good torque. In fact, they both make the same torque. That doesn't mean that they make the same torque curve. That means that they make the same peak torque. And so that's why that's not the end-all be-all. Even if we're just talking about torque, that's not the thing. It's one thing. It's not all the things, though. So which one of them makes more peak horsepower? Well, if you take a look at the comparison, when we ran that 6-liter, which is basically a stock LY6, when we ran it with the fixed cam, because it wasn't a VVT cam, we ran it with a fixed 6-liter cam, it made 443 horsepower. When we put the LS3 cam in it, a factory LS3 cam, it made 477. So we picked up 34 horsepower. So good amount. So if I told you, hey, look, this cam picks up 34 horsepower. Okay, that's good. I like that. I want 34 horsepower. So you're telling me that it makes the same torque and it makes 34 more horsepower. Okay, that seems like a way better choice of camshaft. Yeah, it is. If that's what you're interested in. From the torque peak to the horsepower peak, or even beyond that, because quite honestly, it gained as much as 60 horsepower out at 63 or 6,400 RPM versus the other stock cam. So out there, the gain was big. Peak to peak, you know, like I said, 34 horsepower. And made the same peak torque. So I know what you're thinking. Well, Richard, why wouldn't you just recommend that LS3 camshaft as a good upgrade to a guy that has a 6-liter instead of this other cam? Well, what's happening below that point? And that's the thing. So if we look below that point, if you look on your thumbnail, below 4,400 RPM, the smaller cam is better than the LS3 cam. And this happens every time. And when I've run this LS3 cam, which is a good performance cam being, you know, in air quotes, because it's a factory cam. And so, but the other thing is, I forgot to throw in there, both of these cams you could use with a stock converter. So it makes the LS3 cam with its extra 34 horsepower, as much as 60 out at the 60, between 6,000 and 6,500, and then the same torque, make us look even better. There's no trade-off in that. You could still use a stock converter because this is a stock camshaft. Okay, good. I still want it. Okay. What if you lose a bunch of torque below 45 from 4,500 and below? Now what's the consideration? Okay, well, but I thought you said they made the same peak torque. They do. That's at the peak. That's not where I'm talking about. What about from 2,000 to 4,500? One of them makes a lot more torque. In fact, it makes as much as like 25 to 28 foot-pounds of torque down at like 2,800 RPM. So now which one do you want? And this is the problem. When somebody says, Richard, you know, what cam should I pick between these two? They tell me this, and I'm lucky enough to have tested those two specific cams on a 6-liter. If they were asking about a 6-liter, this would be really good because I'd have all the data. I just show them the graph and tell them, hey, look, here's the graph. You get to pick whichever one of these curves that you like more. Like which part of these curves are you going to be utilizing more? Quite honestly, they're both factory cams. They're both going to drive nice. They're going to both offer decent fuel mileage, you know, as long as you're keeping your foot out of it. They're both have good, you know, peak torque, like I said, and they do all the things that you'd expect of a factory camshaft. One of them just makes a lot more power. So are you going to be taking advantage of that? That would be nice if you're like, if I had a 6-liter and I was putting it in a Camaro or Chevelle or an S10 or something like that, and I was racing it around, I probably would be more apt to pick. I'd trade off the low speed stuff, maybe put a converter in so you're taking away, you're absorbing most of that. If you had a manual trans, maybe you wouldn't worry about it as much. And then I'd be taking advantage of what it had and revving this thing out to 6,500 or even higher than that, and taking advantage of that. Like I said, it still drives around nice, drives around like a stock motor because it essentially is a stock motor. I probably would pick that. If I was towing with this thing, I'd probably pick the smaller cam. And this is the thing. You notice the list of things that we had to go through to come upon, you know, which one you would pick to come upon the best cam or the optimum cam for the combination. And that's the thing. We have to pick the combination. All of these things have to be known before we can recommend one or the other of those, even though they had lots of similarities. You know, stock converter, smooth idle, they're both going to be like 20 inches of idle vacuum. Stock converter, 20 inches of idle vacuum, same peak torque, you know, and the valve train will last for a long time. You can run stock springs on all these because you can just put the blue LS3 style springs in, or the LY6 springs. You can run stock springs on all those, stock push rods, stock rockers, on all that stuff because they're just stock cams. And so they both have a lot of things going for them. But still, you would use them for different, I would argue that you would use them for different applications. And so ultimately, when it comes time to choosing which one of these would be better, I'm not the guy to listen to. Well, Richard said I should pick this one. I'm not the guy to listen to for that. I'm the guy to give you the data and give you the options, and then you get to pick which one of those. And I can explain these just like I'm doing now, explain the things that you should be thinking about. But ultimately, you got to decide, well, you know what? I'm kind of more interested in, you know, 2,000 to 4,500 really, because that's what I'm going to be towing. I'm never going to really be over that. I don't care about racing it out or whatever. Or you know what? I'm going to put a 3,000 stall converter in. I don't care about the other stuff. I'm going to be running that. And then in which case, if you were doing that, I'd probably steer you to a different cam. I'd probably steer you to a low buck truck camshaft from richardholderperformance.com because it would be better than both of these cams. But if you're choosing between these two, and this is the thing, these two that I'm showing you for this comparison could be any two. So this is often the case, even though there's, you know, there are a lot of things that people could say that are similar between these cams, you know, all these things that we just listed. You have to get into the nitty gritty, because if you put these two cams in your motor and you're driving them around, you had them in a truck or whatever, they would definitely be different. They would be different enough that you would definitely notice it. You definitely notice the loss of low speed torque. If you had a stock converter on these things, you definitely notice more power on top. You definitely notice those. And which one of those you liked or didn't like would be a function of which one of those things that you thought was more valuable. Are you like revving this thing out? You know, you're taking your kids to school, you're going to coffee and donuts, you're doing donuts, you know, you're just hooting it up and having a great time. And you're like, oh yeah, this LS3 cam, definitely the right choice. Or you're lugging this thing around with a trailer or whatever. And you know, you're like, well, this thing never goes over 4,500 RPM. I want all this low speed power. In fact, if I could have more, I would want more. And like I said, both whisper, smooth idles and stuff. So the choice would be a personal thing, like an individual thing. And it would still be either one of those, no matter which one you chose, would be the right choice for you. It would be the best cam because it did the things that you wanted it to do the best. Literally. Man, I hate that. So another one of my pet peeves, but I'm getting over that stuff. Okay, let's see what you guys are doing. We gotta get a poll going. Down at 2,800 RPM. Okay, LM7 versus LS3. Would you pick the extra 30 peak horsepower over the extra 25 foot-pounds of torque down low at 2,800 RPM? So you pick the one that makes more peak horsepower over the one that makes a little bit more torque down low. That's basically the question. So that you know. You know. Scottish, what's going on? Eric, Greg, Jordan. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? LY6. We're liking that. Whichever is cheaper. Boost solves the problem. Both of those are the same price because they're both factory cams. They're both basically factory throwaway cams, essentially, that guys get rid of and replace with some sort of performance cam. Now, one of those is a single bolt cam and one of them is a 3-bolt cam because the LM7 cam is a 3-bolt cam. So you'd have to have the gear that goes with that. That's not usually a problem because they'll come with that. But the LS3 cam does require a single bolt. So you have to have the single bolt gear with the appropriate 1X or 4X, depending on what you're doing. And then the big single cam bolt that holds it in place. Is the turbocharged 3800 a better value than the LS? Can you get 600 horsepower out of the 3800 easier than an LS? No, not easier. Any LS that you pick is going to make more NA horsepower than a 3800 and is therefore then going to make 600 horsepower at a lower boost number than you can out of a 3800. That being said, you can make 600 horsepower out of a 3800. We've done it. You know, it's pretty easy. But it's going to be, 14 horsepower or 14 pounds of boost or something like that. Whereas on an LS 5.3 with a cam, it's going to be like at 7. Just put the wrong cam in my new 6.2, 232, 242. Selling the rest of the stuff while I'm listening. That'll be a good cam. That 6.2 will make good power. I don't know what heads you have on it, but I'll say it now. Poll, we did that, Eric, so you should be happy. Building an LQ4 now, and I've got 862, 243, 823 heads, but I got a sloppy stage 3 cam, which I don't think works with rec ports very good. So I'm debating, is it worth it to buy new cam intake or 243 sloppy stage 3 for free? So your statement about the sloppy stage 3 not working with rec port heads is incorrect. It works fantastic. And the combination that you put together that would make the most power is the 823 head and that sloppy stage 3 cam. That'll actually make pretty good power. It's a weekend drag drive. LQ4 is 30 over. And T56. Yeah, definitely put the rec ports. Use an LS3 intake manifold, and that sloppy stage 3 cam, like I said, will make good power. What is the best first power mod for an 89 Fox body 302? Is everything else stock on it? Because that would be unusual for an 89 to still be stock. Where do you get the motors to test the cams? I get most of my motors from the wrecking yards. Heads in a Haltech. I don't think that's what I would do on a 302. The problem with the 302, most guys went through all of they put different mass air meters on them. They put underdrive pulleys on them. They put throttle bodies on them and phenolic spacers and all kinds of things. But really what you need to do on a 5-liter is you got to do the 3 things. So it's heads, cam, and intake manifold. Or I might argue on that 5-liter that you just put a turbo on it and you would get more of a power gain from a turbo with the same price level and probably less, depending on what heads you choose, than putting heads, cam, and intake on a 5-liter. I got an LQ4 799 heads, flat top pistons. I'm not anything on a 350Z. I don't know what you mean by I'm not anything. Or full Holley 4-barrel setup with long tubes. New to Richard's channel. I've been binge watching for 4 days now. That's what I like to hear. Go, Phil. Go with the binge, man. Feel the binge. I'm trying to decide between the 4-inch and a 3622 stroke for ported LS3 build with 4125 bore. I need to use restrictive shorty headers. What are you getting a 4125 bore out of? Because you're not going to do that on a LS3 unless you sleeve the block. I'm going to the motor building process right now, trying to figure out what's the best cam to daily. Okay, Greg. G-Dog. So I don't see the rest of your combination there. The engine's for a 2,100 pound Formula car, so I'm wanting it to be high revving. Nick, what was your thing about? Scrolling. Oh, you retracted your message. That's why I don't know. Pull reminder. Yeah, there you go. Torque wins races. Torque because I tow stuff. Low buck truck cam over the low buck truck cam would be significantly better than both of those cams in this instance. But we were just taking a look at the stock ones. Torque is more funner. My son's 350Z converted from auto with a CD009 and a 5.3 truck Norris cam. Whole built truck manifolds, runs pretty good. Phytech manifold and Terminator X. I'm a Buick V6 guy, but if I was picking a motor for anything, not a Buick, I'd pick an LS. And the nice thing, though, about the choosing between a 3800 and an LS is if you can find an aluminum LS, like an aluminum 5.3, that'd be like better all around. Are the BTR LS heads ever going to be released? I don't know. Are they not out yet? I haven't talked to Brian about them. Debo, what about a stage 4? What? Are you talking about the sloppy stage 3 or? You have to worry about piston to valve clearance if you're getting too big on the camshaft. If the clearance and head flow is there, could you use a rec port cam on a Cathedral port 236, 252? I don't know if that cam fits, but you can run any cam on any head and it still works. I have videos up of comparing rec port cam versus Cathedral port cam on both rec port heads and Cathedral port heads. So we ran all the various combinations and you can see what they do. But the cams do what the cams do, and they do it regardless of which cylinder head you have on there. 122 online, 43 thumbs up. I know we got 60 now, man. We got 124 and 60. So we're doing good. We're doing better. Thanks for sharing the information. No specific cam, but the ones that are labeled stroker, what's the benefit? I don't know which ones are stroker cams. That sometimes they change the valve events because of the dwell time. But again, I've run lots of camshafts on lots of stuff. Day 900 of asking for a liquid nitrogen to air intercooler test. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Put some gears in a stock Fox. My LQ4 3500 tears. That's a sweet spot at 2800. I always read that rec ports like more exhaust duration is why I thought the sloppy stage 3 wouldn't be a good candidate. Plus, I think there's some piston to valve issue possibility, but your answer is music to my ears. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. So look at that test. Look at the rec port versus the Cathedral port. And on those cams, the 459 comp had about 8 degrees, and then the rec port version was a 231, 247, I think. So it had a lot more to split, like you would expect. It's listed as a Cathedral port cam, and that camshaft made a little more power on the top and a little less on bottom than the other cam, and it did that both on the Cathedral port heads and on the rec port heads. So it didn't solve the problem of the big disparity between intake flow and exhaust flow, like people are saying that it does or that it needs. So that's not a thing. That camshaft will make good power, and it'll make good power because I've tested that sloppy stage 3. It'll make good power, and it'll make good power, the most power with your rec port heads, because your rec port heads flow a lot more than your Cathedral port heads do. Shopping for a 408 cam. Yeah, Trevor, just tell me what kind of power you're trying to make. And I have a 408 video up where we ran 4 or 5 different camshafts, and you can kind of see what what kind of, again, like we were talking about tonight, you can choose the power curve that you want. And so just pick the size cam that you want for the power curve that you want. Kind of racing I do needs good low end torque, but also has to carry power out to the extended RPM. So it needs power from idle to red line. I've been looking at a large port. Are you a long runner intake and a long duration cam? What's the max boost you'd feel comfortable with putting to a bone stock LQ4 317Ns without gapping the rings? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do maximum boost without gapping the rings. I would always gap the rings. And how much power do you think it would add at the wheels? There are guys that have run turbos without gapping the rings, but you're always taking a chance. Comment about the engine for the 2,100 pound Formula car was right above that message. And yes, the block is sleeved. Okay. Stage 4 anything requires a higher stall converter. All right, Eric, you're out. LQ4 799 heads per your recommendation. I'm putting flat top pistons in, trying to figure out a cam that's going into a 350Z. And you're going to drive it as a daily. Recommended turbo for the scenario and application. And DIY tips. Would a 4-corner steam kit bump that threshold up even higher at this potential setup? Let's see, Phil, what was your thing? Yeah, what you should do instead of worrying about all those other things that you're talking about is you should put ring gap in it. And then you don't have to worry about that. And then all the other stuff is not that important. Would liquid nitrogen intercooler have much of an impact on power? Yes, it could, as long as the difficulty with liquid nitrogen is dealing with it. It's toxic. It's very, very cold and potentially dangerous. And then also it can be damaging to the things like what I wanted to do was I wanted to take an air-to-air intercooler, submerge it in a tank, and then fill it full of liquid nitrogen and then run a test and see because that's very, very cold, obviously. I don't know what the resulting change in temperature is going through that because I don't know how, what level of efficiency we have going across that core. It should cool it more than ice water, I would think. But like, how low can we get it? It's not going to, even going through that, it's not going to do what like a compressed air supercharger does because it has that temperature exiting the compressed air supercharger. So that's going to be a much better deal. And you can get huge power gains from really, really cold charge temperature. I just don't know on the liquid nitrogen thing. It would be awesome to do. Any experience with cryogenically frozen parts? No, I haven't ever tried that. And they're the only, I think the intended benefit for that or the advertised benefit for that is longevity more than anything else. And so what I'm doing is we're not testing that. I'm a bit off topic. I'm curious, do you have any Carcraft magazines on the shelf in the back there? I heard they stopped making them. I'd have to look and see. I don't think I have very many magazines there. I had probably, I'm sure I had 50 boxes of magazines. I think we've thrown them all away now. Lowbuck truck on Richard Holdener Performance is a good daily cam. It is a very good daily cam. And that's why I have that cam, because it's really it's like 90% of what everybody wants, particularly guys that are daily driving. And then also it carries over to daily driving stuff. It makes really good power. It makes good torque and is really good for turbo stuff, like most cams, like every cam. But because it does these other things really good, it does those things really good under boost. And so when you apply boost to it, like you can go to a you could go into 4-digit power levels with what most would consider like a daily driver cam. And so a lot of guys have a hard time understanding that. And you get guys that will try to talk you out of that too. Oh, you need a stage 2 or 3. You're trying to make 1,000 horsepower. You need a stage 2 or 3 turbo cam. No, you don't. LY6, L96. There you go. In the house. Phil and Tino, we have the same setup on the 67 Camaro with twin 67 millimeter Borg Warners, making 1,300 on 24 pounds. Based on our daily weather. I need power from idle to red line. Yeah, you won't find a cam that does that. I mean, they all will do that. They all make power from idle to red line, but you're still going to have to, the cam is still going to favor some RPM, because it's not going to be all of that. No cam is like that. Even a variable cam is like that. If you try to run zinc oil on your non-cat cars, if so, it's good for cam wear. Again, we don't test longevity, so I would have no way to analyze that. Liquid nitrogen can liquefy oxygen out of the air. Obviously wouldn't happen in an intercooler due to the airspeed. Yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about that. I'd be more worried about it cracking the aluminum and stuff on the air to water intercooler or the air to air intercooler. There. The BS. My point about liquid nitrogen being potentially toxic is it eliminates the air, and so if you're in there without the fan on in the dyno, that can become problematic. We have the Norris, but I would have the Lowbuck if you're selling it back then. Yeah, no, the Truck Norris is an excellent cam. They do the same thing, so you made a good choice. BTR stuff is really good. Talking about your cams, are you going to offer a max effort cam? No, because the problem with doing a max effort cam is that the market for that is tiny. And also, what max effort is it? Like, is it a max effort 5.3? Is it a max effort 4.8? Is it a max effort 6.0 or 6.2 or stroker, or what is it? You know, and then you get to even more nitpicky stuff. And we had for the gentleman that's asking, we had a max effort cam up there, at least a max effort with available piston to valve clearance, factory piston to valve clearance. We had Brian's because we're a Brian Tooley Racing dealer. So if you want something from Brian Tooley Racing, we can get it from richardholderperformance.com. We can get it from our store. So we can sell you anything that Brian has. But we had listed up on our store just for this reason. If a guy wanted a big camshaft, and it's a camshaft I have tested a lot, their LS3 stage 4 camshaft, which we ran in that 5.3 that made 545 horsepower, that would be what you would be thinking of it in terms of a max effort kind of thing. And we sold this many of them. So we actually took it down. So that's not a popular cam, whereas our low buck truck camshaft and the Truck Plus camshafts are very popular. I know little to nothing when it comes to this stuff. Yeah, Greg, you came to the right place. There's lots of good information here. You didn't like your VQ engine? I mean, an LS obviously makes more power, but what did he do for the ECU and harness? Ours is full hillbilly, 1,800 total to get it running on stock ECU, which I had a 6-liter. Ever hear anything more on the new Summit intake being tested? I haven't. 4-inch small block Vortec heads, 268 comp cam. What's a ballpark torque? I don't know. I can guesstimate. What heads does that thing have on it? Wait a minute here. I need to do this. Why are you? There we go. Dyno results. Small block Chevy. Just going to do some multiplication here. There we go. So if we look at that, okay. So if you do what we did, if it maintains the same specific torque output, it's going to be about 430 foot-pounds on the 400. Assuming that you have a dual plane intake manifold, I'm assuming. I got a Terminator X, and GT45 is inbound. Did you get his dash gauges to work? You done any testing yet on the Canavalve heads? I have not. I haven't run a set of those. We're supposed to be comparing a set of those to the 220 heads that I have. Thought about trying Chiram eBay special. The intakes prices are crazy, and love to see some $500 range stuff getting tested. So that you know that intake manifold that looks like a high ram, there's no reason that it doesn't do kind of what a high ram does. And on a turbo application, if that's what you're putting it on, if it fits and it's in your budget, you should just put it on, because it's going to do about that. It has that kind of runner length, and there's nothing going to stop it from being wrong. And so if the price is right, you should just get it. So you can get hot rod and red hot cams. Yes. We can get those. And DOD delete stuff, all of that stuff. That was my issue. I replaced the galley gaskets, can never get it timed back again. Would an LS9 can be good for a turbo setup with an LR4, or would it be best to buy a stage 3 or 4 turbo cam? Guy, you got to tell me how much power you'll make And neither one of those cams that you're recommending for a 4.8 would be my choice. I think all of those are terrible choices. Both of those are terrible choices unless you're trying to do really, really high RPM stuff. This is the learning channel, right? It's the automotive learning channel. Danny, what's going on? Richard, will you expand into small block Ford turf on your website? Maybe. Maybe. Richard is the Jedi Master of the dark arts. There. Dual plane 650 carb. Okay. Yeah, 650 carb. Well, I don't know. Those heads that's still going to be in the 400 horsepower range, I'm guessing. Something like that. What's your recommendation for cam on a budget turbo build in a 2001 Tahoe? You should get one of my low buck truck camshafts. It's cheaper than the other stuff that you'll get from BTR or Cam Motion or Comp or any of those guys. And of the many of those that we've sold, we have had zero complaints. Everybody loves it, and that's why I keep selling it. I've tested it extensively. It had a lot of testing done on it, and it works very well. And do you have a 5.3 or a 4.8 or a 6.0? I mean, in either case, I have videos up on both of them, so it works really good. Whatever camshaft you think you want, downsize 2. There you go. Keep it stock, automotive PBS. There you go. I like the wrong cam shirts. They make fella look yoke. What's up? Come on, get some. TSP Chupacabra makes more power than what? The Chupacabra doesn't make more cam than the low buck truck camshaft does, and it doesn't make more power than the Chuck Norris cam. They're all very, very comparable. What part of a tune should I start on after a 706 head swap on a stock 6-liter? Their chart or timing runs good now, just a small amount of ping. The timing is what I would be concerned about on that. I think that the air fuel probably is close enough that you're running a mass air. So I think that if you drive it around a while, that long-term fuel trims would probably take care of that. And the mass air is going to take care of some of that already. If it still has a factory tune in it, you can make more power with a non-factory tune. But if you're going from 317s to 706s, you're definitely going to run into like detonation issues with the amount of timing that they have. I was sent a 3200 to 3500 lockup stall for my 6-liter mild build in a 4L60. The car's for street and strip. Is this going to work? Sticks. I got to see what one you're talking about. That seems like a lot of converter. What camshaft do you have in that thing? Did I miss that? The poll has exactly 100 more clicks than the thumbs up. Man, what's going on? Smash the like button. You mean a liquid nitrogen intercooler? Yeah, Dan, that's what I want to do. I want to submerge an air-to-air, or what I had talked about was submerging an air-to-air core in a bath of liquid nitrogen and then just run the boost through it on the engine dyno. Have you checked out Aces? I have not. Where do you get the motors? I get them from the wrecking yard, and sometimes I sell them. Chat really makes me wish I was an LS fan. Well, we can talk about anything else too. So you can ask whatever questions you want, because obviously I test all the engine families, or try to. I have a 5.4 Summit Big Nasty cam. Okay. Need old English dude doing commentary during the dyno test, PBS style. It sounds so eloquent when they're doing it. Does the crossover X-pipe do anything on a twin turbo motor, even if moderating the sound? Yeah, if you're talking about after the turbo, the X-pipe will definitely change the sound quality. It's just that the turbo has already kind of muffled that. But I don't know that it will do anything to power. I mentioned the Haltech earlier is due to the LQ4 stuff out there being junk. Now popping a cap. Pop a cap on that LQ4. But the guy in PBS doesn't go wah. We could make him do that, but he has to do the wah in a British accent. And he has to do it as a V8 too, not like maybe an Aston Martin Vantage or Vanquish or something. I found myself wanting to test TMOS and Big Dog porting and see who makes more power. I don't know about comparing two guys that ported heads, that kind of thing, but I would like to do the Big Dog stuff, particularly their Cobra intake manifolds. Nobody tunes LQ4s anymore. Yeah, I thought is that a dying art or something? Would it be worth the money switching from LQ4 pistons to flat tops when I would have to be rebalanced and all that with 823s? Yes, on 823s, but an 823 is going to have a very similar compression ratio to the 317s you took off of that if you had an LQ4 or 317s. So you're not changing it a whole bunch there, but a flat top would help that obviously a lot on an 823 head. You have to do cam lifters on my 6.2. You could also, though, if you don't want to change the short block, you could also mill the head. And instead of an 053 head gasket, which sounds like you're gonna have to put head gaskets on anyways, you could put 041 head gaskets in it and get more compression from both of those. I have to do cam lifters on my 6.2 L99. Keep it or get rid of VVT. Are you still running the factory computer? And if you're doing a performance cam, you're probably not going to pick a VVT cam. I don't think. You might. Just let me know what your thoughts are. Most people that do a cam upgrade on those, they get rid of VVT and they just put a fixed cam in it. Putting the air-to-air in a liquid nitrogen bath if there's no or limited airflow. No, Dan, I don't know if you've seen Westex dyno, but you have an unlimited amount of airflow. And that's what I was talking about earlier is that, asphyxiation would be an issue if you were just standing there and not having the doors open or whatever. But there's a ton of airflow for that. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. You'll freeze the moisture from the air, restricting the flow through the core. Yeah, I don't know if that will be a thing on the core. But again, that's why I would like to try it. What's your opinion on the LS3 head with a 260 runner? Would it be better with a 235 or 245 runner while keeping the rec port, such as a Mass 245 or Pro Max? I don't know what a smaller port is way better. If you can get the same flow through a smaller port, it will work better. It should make more average power. Do you have any engines for sale right now? I'm going to have some aluminum 5.3s coming up here. Now they got the right push rods in my rocker arm geometry. Do you feel a stud girdle is necessary in 7/16 rocker stud? What kind of RPM are you running? And what, more importantly, I think for this, what kind of spring pressure are you running? Big Dog porting has a Chinese air gap flowing 300. Yeah, not that interested in the carbureted stuff, but because I've done lots of testing before with extrude hone stuff on those, I would like to see the Cobra, the porting on the Ford Cobra manifolds that they do. LQ9 for the win. Did you say one time before you've tested a 5.7 cam swap and there was no advantage to it? Not building a small block Chevy ever again, if I do remember hearing that. Yeah, we didn't see a power gain just from changing the firing order. I have a 5.4 big nasty cam, a 6.0. I was sent a lockup converter. Yes, a 32 to 3500 stall converter is going to work with that cam. The cam's not really that big, though. I don't think it needs that much cam, particularly on a 6-liter, but it will run and it will drive around. If swapping iron heads to 243 heads on a 6-liter, would you expect it to tolerate more timing? Yes, I would. Maybe. Here's the consideration. You're going from what is essentially an iron, if it's an early motor, you're going essentially from an iron 317 head, which has a bigger chamber, to an aluminum head that has a smaller chamber. So in one sense, you should be able to get away with more timing. And in the other sense, you should be able to get away with less timing. So where did our trade-off eventually come to? I would say it's you're way in favor of the 243 head. That's a way better way to go. The 243 head is going to make more power. Must gap rings to boost. Got it. Beyond that, what would be max boost to put on a bone stock LQ4? And approximately what horsepower would it be? We've run over 1,500 horsepower on a stock LQ4 bottom end. Stock block, stock crank, stock rods, stock pistons with ring gap and 2 big turbos. And so you can do that if that's what you want to do. We had good heads on it, good intake, good air to water intercooling, good fuel, all of that stuff. So more than likely, you're not going to be doing that. And if you are, then look at the big bang stuff that I have up there. If you're going to be trying to make 700, 800, 900 or 1,000 horsepower, whatever, people do that all day long. That's not a problem. You just put ring gap in it, put head studs on it, put the right fuel pump and injectors, which we have at the store, put the right size turbo on it and a good camshaft in it, which obviously we have those. And then so like 1,000 horsepower stuff and 1,000 horsepower and below stuff is very, very easy. So if you just tell me the power output you're trying to get to, you won't have to do a roundabout thing on the maximum amount of boost that you can make. The isopropyl alcohol and dry ice. Yeah, that's way worse than the liquid nitrogen is going to be, I think. Have to run, friends. Okay, but I'm waiting to see what engine won. Oh, what do you mean? You're waiting to see what the poll is? Right now, it is. Most people are picking that they want the low speed power, which is kind of typical of when I do these things. They like the engine that makes the low speed power more than they like the ones that makes more peak power. It's all about the torque, man. It's all about that base. Do you think swapping stock 98 LS1 heads for 243s is worth it? Probably not, if that's the only swap that you're doing. You're not going to see a big gain from that. Take a look, Alan. Take a look at the video that I did where we did all of the stock heads, because 241 LS1 heads were one of those. And so you can compare the difference in the power between a 241 head and a 243 head. And it's not a lot. It's not enough where I would do that as the only thing, unless you ported them. Have the British guy do the V8 from a Jensen Interceptor. Yeah, that's just a Chrysler. That's an American V8. I meant engine airflow with the engine off. Any moisture in the air will freeze. I meant engine airflow. You mean the air around the bath of the thing? Not the air that's in the intercooler, right? Is there a general rule to think about when designing the low RPM cam? Seems like an aggressive roller ramp is good. Lower duration, minimal overlap or no overlap. Are you still talking about your 600 RPM thing again? Big blocker LS on a turbo build. Yes, both of those you can do. It's a lot better thing to when you come here, so that I don't know if you come here often, but it's way easier for you just to tell me how much power you want to make, and then we could tell you how to do that. One of those isn't going to do that better than the other. You usually with either one of those, you can make more than enough power. That's almost never the problem. The problem is, or the other things to consider would be a big block is going to weigh a lot more than an LS is. Are you already starting with one or the other? A big block probably is going to cost more than doing the same thing to an LS, because an LS right from the wrecking yard with a cam and springs in it is going to be a pretty easy thing to make lots of power with. LM7 or LS3 will. Those are the two camshafts that we're talking about. Yeah. What would you recommend for low end torque and power? I'm looking at doing a GT45 Ultra Treat build. Need EFI recommendation? Yeah, that will work. A big block turbo build has the potential to make a lot of power. Yeah. Just as a PSA, the 340 is, I'm sure that's just the best thing that ever happened ever in the known universe. Are you talking about, are you talking about the 340 small block Dodge motor? Or the 340 fuel pump? Or 340 AM or PM o'clock? I'm a sucker for the extra 30 horsepower up top. Trans turns RPM into torque. There you go. Have you tested 706 versus 243 milled? No, I haven't tested a stock head versus a cheated head, if that's what your question is. No, I haven't done that. There was only 2.5 cc's difference between the 706 head and the 799 heads that I tested when I did that test. What do you think of the M311 Frankenstein heads? No, I don't know. I've never tried them. Always thought the firing orders change was for durability. I'm sure you guys have tested that, Dan. I mean, if you were doing any cup stuff, I'm sure that they would have tried that. And if they would have done it, they would have known if they saw any power, but I'm sure that they would be doing it for other reasons. We used to work with a lot of liquid nitrogen in the enclosed portable clean room. No vents other than what escaped under the wall. Have a set of 799 heads from a Cadillac and thinking about putting it on an LM7 bottom end. Is there a cam lift limit? The cam lift limit will be piston to valve clearance, not the fact that you did a head change. The moisture in the air going through the core, it won't change much if at all. At Dyne-In, we extrude honed the intake and plenums on the 5-liter V12s. It's good for 10 to 12 with everything else basically stock. I love a high flow TPI style manifold for my LS. Is it because you want to make even more like lower speed torque? Or just because it looks really good? Because it does. Super glad I discovered your wealth of knowledge. We're glad you're here, Phil. Come anytime. The 330 LA motor, the best thing ever in the universe. Nice. So everybody knows Bobby is a 340 Dodge fan. Richard, what mechanical fuel pump would you recommend for an LS running 85? A mechanical pump? I've never tried a mechanical pump on an LS. Eventually, I'd like to play around with the BMW V12. 351 Cleveland over a 340. I don't think that I'd like to see the 68 version of that 340 with the one that has the manual version that has the big camshaft in it. I'd like to see what that does. The problem with the 340 is it's a lot like a small block Chevy in that it doesn't have good head flow, not in comparison to a Cleveland or a Boss. So it's just, a 340 Duster made good power. Those are pretty light cars. They were fast. But it doesn't make how much power. It doesn't make the power. It won't make the power. Even a tri-power one or even that 68 version will not make the power that I'm firmly convinced that it doesn't make the power that a Boss 351 does. I saw fresh LS engine brake keeper. Could have been installed improperly. Maybe it wasn't. The only time I've seen keepers break is on when guys over rev them, or when the keeper wasn't put in correct to begin with, so that it wasn't all the way in, so that it snaps out. I've seen that, but otherwise, keepers breaking, I haven't really seen. 5.3 stroker, 243 ported heads, 233, 248. 78, 75 turbo, looking for 1,000 horsepower. So yeah, that's not hard at all. So Chris, you could take a 5.3 that's not a stroker with stock 706 heads, with a stock intake manifold, with my little 212 cam, and easily make 1,000 horsepower. So all of the other stuff that you've done with that big cam and ported heads and if it's a stroker, I'm assuming it's a 383. 1,000 horsepower will be very, very easy and will come at very low boost. It's just not going to be terribly responsive with that big a cam because you don't need anywhere near that much camshaft in that thing to make that power. What motor would you do for an all-out 6.0 NA stock bottom end race type motor? 85 factory heads, factory LS3 manifold. Well, if you're limiting everything to factory stuff, so it sounds like from this combination that I have to have a stock bottom end, and then I have to have a stock head and a stock manifold. And then you're asking me what motor I would do. I mean, doesn't that already dictate what 6-liter I would pick? And it's obviously, if it's an LS3 manifold, it's going to have a rec port head on it, which I would pick anyways if I had to stay with factory stuff, because that's going to make the most power. So that's just going to, it sounds like it's just going to be a cam to 6-liter. What's your point on big blocks, small blocks regarding what do you have in there? It's really important being able to bolt everything up with a bunch of mods. It's really nice. Lunchbox belt drive, air motive, or Waterman pumps for 100 plus PSI. I'd put in $30 to help. For what are you putting in $30 in for, Nathan? LS3 box are not any good. Core shift and thin iron sleeves make it a no-go. We should drive off the back of the dry sump pump to run a mechanical fuel pump via cable to the fuel cell. Okay. I'm curious what situation why he's wanting to run a mechanical pump. Cue the dog on the Mopar boys. No, I'm a Mopar fan. I haven't. I'm a Mopar owner. So I'm a Mopar guy. I can say that. And a 340, I'm actually a fan of. The one that I think I'm more of a fan of than the 340, although the 340 I think is their performance small block. But the 360 and the Little Red Wagon, that's one that I've always wanted to make a duplicate of. The selling cams are low buck truck, and the polls are in favor of low end torque. But which videos get the most views? The one that has the most views right now is how to modify your 6-liter. Getting an older cam reground to run on a 540. Is it worth doing the 7/612? You're having a cam reground rather than just getting a new big block Chevy cam? I don't think I would go that route. And I wouldn't worry about the firing order swap. LS3 blocks are good. I'll take all of them. They are really good. They're very desirable. They're just not good for really high horsepower stuff. How can you check a keeper that's not all the way in and installed incorrectly with the heads off of the car? I just took it for granted the keeper was okay when installing these springs. The visual check is the thing that I do most often is I make sure when I'm putting them in, when I'm putting new keepers on or springs or whatever we're changing, that I can feel each one of them click in properly. So that's important to me. And then you can go over it and look visually. You can do a finger swipe across them too if you want to do that. If one side is out and is not flat and even with the other, it's not in correctly, and you need to compress that spring again before it snaps that retainer or the keeper, because it can do that. But usually you can see that it's out, because if it's not visibly higher than the other, it's probably in place. Thanks for the reply. Instead of 243s on my LS1, I think your plus cam makes more sense. Alan, a camshaft will make way more difference than cylinder heads will on that combination. Have you seen the Texas Speed rod and piston package for 6-liter LS? No balance needed when used with a stock crank. They rate at 900 horsepower. Do you think they're underrating it? Yeah, it's way underrated. If it's a forged rod and forged piston, you could make twice that much with a rod and piston, given what we've done on the stock stuff. So that's not an issue. The thing that once you put forged rods and forged pistons in it, then something else becomes the limiting factor in terms of that. And if it's a no balance thing, I'm wondering how they got the balance to match what's there. That's not impossible, but I'm just curious to see what they did. Thomas, you want to run milled 243 is? The engine is so smooth and makes a wonderful turbine level engine noise. There's a reason they use it in the McLaren F1. Oh, I thought you were talking about the 383 Mopar. I'm like, I've not heard it. I mean, Dulcich is a big fan of those. I've not heard it. Those sorts of accolades thrown at it. But you're talking about the BMW V12. I have an opportunity to pick up a Mopar out of an old Charger. Not sure what I would do with it yet, but plan to pick it up. Hey, if it's free, it's free. My keepers, if you replace them, make sure the lock profiles match the valve. Yep. Will a stock 6-liter with 28 thousandths ring gap and 706 handle 150 shot? Yeah, a stock 6-liter without ring gap will handle 150 shot. But yes, it would easily handle that. The engine with the failed keeper made a few tuning pulls and 990 horsepower than 1500 before braking. Is it the other thing that can possibly break a keeper is you're not running into coil bind, are you? That tune's in your head now. I know that's what happens, right? Near. BS, I know that happens. Like, it's a small world, man. My first car was 68 Barracuda 340, a 4-speed, 2,800 pounds. And considering the era, I didn't have too much respect for any street big block. Yeah, that was a good combination. That was like having the 350 horse 327 in the little Chevy 2 also. How do you think a low buck truck would do on an LS3? It would be really good. It'd make a lot more low speed power than a factory LS3 cam does. Can a 525 horse LS3 4L80 outperform an LS3 6L80 525 horsepower? I don't know. I don't know what the gearing is in those or the converter. I want to run a mechanical pump because electric pumps burn out a lot on drag and drive events. Okay. How much boost from a Pro Charger would you be comfortable with running a 10.5 to 1 compression on pump gas with an air to air? I don't know. I don't know what that number is. You're gonna, as you go up in boost, you're just gonna have to take away timing, and so you're trading one kind of power for the other. Ultimately, the boost should make a little bit more, but you're gonna have to take away a bunch of timing because you're trying to do it on pump gas. I have what I need for an LS3, but want a good sound and torque. I know most people want the high-end number, but from an LS3, but I probably won't push it past 6,500. BS, representing for Pontiac. Great point of making sure the keepers are right for the valves. They're not all the same, yeah. Good info on the keepers. One more thing to worry about. I know that now we don't sleep because we're worried about the keepers. At least the 340 is decent looking. LS3 low buck truck cam versus 525 horse Chevy grind. So you want a low buck truck cam versus the what is the 525 horse Chevy? What do you know what the specs are, Dustin? I think that cam's bigger than a low buck truck camshaft is. Has anyone tried the Hellcat blower with Cathedral port adapters? I have not yet. Yeah, valve float's not good. Interesting, there's no balance rod and piston kit since not all 6-liter piston rods weigh the same. I was wondering about that because the LQ4 and LQ9 and LY6 and a variety of other 6-liter versions, they don't have the same pistons. They might have the same rods, but they don't have the same pistons in them. Can you put rectangular heads LS3 on an LS1? No. Balance would just need to be close. They routinely overbalance lower ends by 4% of bob weight on super speedway tracks. Piston I measured yesterday, LQ4, 440 grams. Pins 164. LQ9, 472. 150, 609 versus 621. Okay. I wonder why the pin is different on those. Is it because they're... Is one of those were those... Is one of those a Gen 3 and the other one a Gen 4? At Knowledge's Power, what Hemi 3 stuff are you selling? I have some Gen 3 Hemi. I have a Gen 3 Hemi cam. It's up on the channel. It's up on the store right now. Is having a set of 799s ported and polished worth $1,000? Yes, if you are in a situation where you need more airflow from your head. So if you tell me what that is, if you're going to do a turbo, don't port the head. Don't worry about that. But if you're not, then ported heads. And if you have enough camshaft where now you have reached the flow rate of the cylinder heads, you can easily get 25 or 30 horsepower from porting the heads. Max boost, you want to run a 5.3 stroker, 26-28 gap. You mean max boost that I want to run on it? I don't know what your combination is or what your turbo is or what you're trying to do with this. Gen 3 LQ4 and a Gen 4. Okay. So one of them is going to be a press pin and the other one's going to be a floating pin, right? Like to grab a Hellcat blower for one of the LS's, but they're not cheap. No, and you have to have the whole assembly, basically. 351 Windsor, 5,500 RPM. No, you don't have to have any sort of stud girdle or anything for that. That's not necessary. Can I trust a Craigslist supercharger for an LS3? I don't know what supercharger it is. Eagle heads, comp turbo, stage 2 cam, Summit Forge piston rod set. That should all work good. It made a tiny bit more power with overbalancing and didn't do anything bad. A V8 is only really balanced at 1 RPM anyway. There's Hellcat blowers near me for 800. I learned today you can tell a 5.3 crank from a 6.0 and 6.2 crank by a drill hole on the outside of the rod journal on the crank. Really? Those should all be the same crank though, right? Now a Gen 3 and a Gen 4 crank would have a different reluctor on them. And then they also might be, I think that the balance weights are different on those too. So, okay, one more minute. We're going to stay with 61%, saying, nope, I will not pick that extra horsepower. Give me all the torques. Found an LM4 to pick apart. Okay, you got me. I want the aluminum block. Guess what? They won't sell the short block or a long block, only complete engines, and the price is wrong. That's not good. Their balance difference, the bigger, heavier the bore, the deeper the hole. Oh, so it's a balance hole on one of the counterweights? Interesting. Interesting. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good times. What head gasket would you sex for turbo 6-lever studs not going to the machine shop? Well, I like surfacing the deck because you got to make sure that the deck is smooth enough, has the right RA number for, and I was using MLS gasket. And the ones that we put on stuff is a factory LS9 gasket or a BTR has good gaskets. We also use Felpro stuff. Advance, I was going out of business. The best LS engine is when you get a deal on, or the one you already have. The AFR Enforcer LS3 has a 238cc runner versus a stock 260. Looks like a really good 6-liter truck head. I wouldn't come to that conclusion because if the 238cc runner flows as much as the 260, it makes it still a good everything head. And it has the same size valves. It's still a high RPM head. I have an 02 Yukon I'm parting out with a stock Elm 7 and an 04 Caddy CTSV with a spun rod bearing. Richard, would you ever do videos of car build, setup, racing? No, probably not. We will do stuff on the chassis dyno, and we might do stuff on the Mustang. We'll put an LS in that, so I'll probably do something on that. T56 trans and good brakes. I like the T56 trans. I need one of those. If anybody knows where I can find one, I need one for an L33. L330. L3 to the 3. Yeah, we don't like that. We don't like any of that. We are not down. 4.8 cranks have at least one counterweight that isn't machined. The 4.8 crank's easy to tell. It has a different casting number. And so do the rods. Sergeant brings a knife to a dog fight, to a dog man fight. BNR, what is your summit racing thing? What are you talking about? Oh, get a T56 from Summit Racing? Yeah, no, I need a good guy deal. 238 with a 208 intake versus a 2165. Okay, so I doubt that that airflow research head flows as well as the bigger valve head does. I have a T56. It's from a 95, 96 F body. So it's the LT1 version. Down with L33. Yeah, you know me. T56 my GTO. Might be willing to let it go when the time comes. What would you put in there instead? Liberty makes a nice 5-speed. Yep. T56 Magnum. How can I tell if my motor is a 4.8 or a 5.3? You can look at the crank and the rod casting numbers. Those are different. LS3 525 Chevy 226 236. Yeah, that's bigger than my camshafts. And on that note, I'm out. All right, BS. We'll see you, man. 5.3 stroker 233. Yeah. Chris, you could run 30 pounds on that if you have enough octane. Do you have a test video of these two combos? Yeah, there are videos up of that test. And new TKX is less than a used T56. I actually have I think I I do have a 5-speed for the Mustang. It's a TKO, I think. So I could put that in there, I guess, with the right bell housing. But it probably has the wrong input shaft though, right? A 5-liter Mustang is going to be a different input shaft than the LS needs. But that just means I put a different clutch on it. Folks running into such things in northeastern Tennessee, crazy stuff, dogmen, werewolf-looking things, Sasquatch. All of that stuff's in Tennessee. I want to put a Thunderbird 8.8 in the back of a Cadillac chassis. It's bigger, yeah, but so you think there would be much more torque? Dustin, I may have tested that camshaft. I'm going to take a look and see because I think Elgin does those camshafts for them, and I may have run that camshaft. Richard just match up the clutch sticks. Yeah, we could do that. It's just that then you're always buying a hybrid kind of clutch assembly. What do you think a dart sleeve 5.3 board and stroke to 441 would handle? You mean in terms of boost? If I was doing that, I wouldn't bore and stroke it to be that big. I don't. There'd be no reason to take the wall thickness away from it. I don't know what the sleeve thickness is after you do that, but there's no reason to make it that big because the turbos can make as much power as the turbos can make. Even if your clearance bearing to clutch is right, make sure the anti-rotation stud is long enough. Oh, you like the manual, but you're lazy? Okay. Well, modified, send me a price. Let me know what you want for it. Are there any downsides to untrying the valves on a 706 head on a 6-liter? No. No, you could gain a pretty good bit of flow doing that. GMO critters? What is? Or should I just say it was crazy? No, I overbuilt. I want there to be Sasquatch stuff. I want there to be that. Yeah, Dan, the T56 is a 6-speed. What would you recommend in the case of a dart sleeve 5.3? I'm shooting for 200, 2,000 to the crank. Yeah, so you just need to get 2,000 horsepower with the turbos, and there are some good turbos that you can get that would make that power, assuming that you have the tune right and all that. LQ4 706 heads running an old school STS turbo, but with a modern Turbonetics 600 horsepower, 450 pump, 80s FMIC. Okay. What time would you pull to start? 91 octane with water methanol, no E85. I don't know. I don't really run lots of boosted stuff on 91. But if you're running, I don't know what kind of pressure you're running, but Matt does a lot of pump gas stuff, and his rule is 14 degrees of timing for 14 pounds of boost on pump gas. That seems to work fairly well. I'm thinking that the 14 degrees in that case is at the horsepower peak, and so at the torque peak, it's going to be lower than that. But probably low teens is going to be where the timing is going to need to be. Water methanol will help that with that. You might be able to get away with a little more with water methanol. We have 130 likes and 131 people. We got a bunch. Ever heard of V8 2-stroke at 12,000 RPM? No, the only 2-stroke stuff like that I've seen are like outboard motors, I think. Build them at 12 degrees. Something similar. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. 450 horsepower, the T5. I ran that forever in my Mustang with a Vortec on. Now, Vortec has a rising boost curve, so we don't have a big torque number there. Now, the thing about the splines are the same on a lot of things, like the standard 10 spline, so disc may not be an issue anyway. Low teens is where I'll start. Yeah, that's probably a good spot. I don't like giving people timing numbers. It's the T5 and go AR5. I mean, for what I'm doing, really, the 5-speed that I have would be fine, because we're just looking for doing turbo testing basically, and on the chassis dyno, it's just going to be a 1-gear turbo test. It's going to be a 4th gear thing, like it's going to be a 1-to-1 deal. And then we could, but we want to be able to drive it around. I just have always wanted a T56 and something. The overdrive gear set and T5. Yeah, this is a TKO though. Is that still a T5? I violently melted a piston at 19 degrees on 19 pounds. I don't think an AR5 is going to be better than the transmission that I have. Need to get my hands on a 345. Oh, the rear axle. Yeah, the TKO is much better. That's what I thought. 1-to-1 would make the most power on the chassis now. Yeah, we just, I just want it to be consistent really more than anything. So I just need to get the bell housing. What would be the best duration for max torque on a stock converter 2006 Escalade 6.2? Is a 16? Is that an LT1 base motor? If that's still in, there. When do they start? If that's an LT motor, I don't really know. I won't have an answer to that. Oh yeah, that started at 14. I thought that it did. A BMW Getrag. Yeah, we just need something simple. It just needs to be able to go on the dyno, and the clutch needs to not slip at like 800 at the tire or something. It just needs to be, something that'll work. And the Mustang has that silly what is the spline clutch section on the pedal on the Mustang called? I can't remember. Mine never went out. Everybody was surprised. I still have the factory one. The clutch quadrant, that's what it is. Yeah, mine is still the factory. Although I haven't tried to use it in a decade, I'm sure. So multi-disc clutch needed. That's what I'm thinking. Is your daily truck boosted? No. I broke a few R5s with a turbo 2.4, my Sky. Richard, you have a Ford 9-inch in your 5-liter? No, I still have the original 8.8 in there. G9688. I have a Porsche GT2. Yeah, those are probably really inexpensive, right? I just find those at wrecking yards. Yeah, we tried to put boost on it. It was not happening. In fact, I just got a thing. I got to get it smogged, so I have to fix the check engine light on. I got to fix the O2 or the knock sensors on it. Calvin says the LT motor is better than the LS. He says the earlier LT motor is better than the LS, or the later LT motor is better than the LS. The old article was wrong in your car. What did the old article say? Being knock limited, if I get caught out with a lower octane like 87, can I add a ratio of 116? Yeah, you can mix fuels. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by saying that an LT is better. If you compare a factory one to a factory one, it makes more power. So if that's the definition of better, if popularity is the metric, it's not even close. Just no on the OptiSpark. Yeah, no, I think he's talking about the later ones. You had a Ford 9-inch with 3.0 gears, maybe 321s, be NASCAR gears. Yeah, no, that I've never had a 9-inch in my car at all, ever. I have had a lot of different gear sets that I've tried for the Silver State, but they've all been 8.8 stuff. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up, and I will be back tomorrow.